Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. All right, so today we're gonna paint Panther on the Prowl, and I'm gonna be sipping on a little Pinot Noir. So let's get painted and let's get sipping. All right, so for the materials today, I'm gonna be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 canvas. You could certainly switch up the size if you're gonna paint along with me, but that's the size I'm using. I'm gonna be using acrylic paint today. The colors I'm using are Mars Black, Burnt Umber, which I'll call brown, Titanium White, Burnt Sienna, which I'll call rust, Deep Yellow, and Green Oxide. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'm going to be using. I'll be using 3 brushes today. I have a 1/2 inch wide bristle brush, I have a 1/4 inch wide bristle brush, and I have a number 3 round brush, and I'll refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And again, you could switch those up if you're painting with me. And let's see what else. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I'm going to be providing you with a couple of additional resources. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same paint kit that I'm using. It's got the same large canvas, same paint, same brushes. So that's down there for you. There's also a free downloadable image of the final painting. So you can just click on that link and then download the picture and print it and use it as a visual reference as you go along. And there's also written step-by-step instructions in the description below as well. And that's all we're going to need today. All right, so what we're going to do for the first step is probably the easiest step I've ever given on any painting. We're going to be painting the whole canvas black. I'm going to be using my big brush. You can use any paint stroke that you want. You could go left to right, which is what I'm doing. You could do circles, you could do X's, you could go, left to right and then vertical. Whatever works for you is totally fine. The main goal here is to just get a nice even coat throughout the entire canvas. So I usually kind of pick up a good amount of paint and then just start spreading it all over the place until I get a nice even coat. And then when I'm done, I'll go back and forth just to make sure that I have it nice and smooth over the whole thing. So the reason why we're doing a nice black base for this is because it's going to provide us with a great background. This is a night scene. It's a Black Panther. So this is really just going to provide us with a great place to start. And it's going to make our job a whole lot easier as we go through the painting process because we've already got the majority of the painting in its, natural state almost done. All we really need to do after we get this black background on here is put all the little fine-tuned details on there. So once we've got this step all nice and done, we will be switching to the medium brush. But if you want to, also you can paint the edges or the sides of your canvas as you go through this process. That'll make it look nice and complete. So if you want to paint those edges, feel free to do it at this point because you've got the black paint on your brush and the black around the edges provides a beautiful, nice little border around your canvas. So you're going to get ready for the next step once you've got this background done with your medium brush. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are outlining our facial features, and I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be pre-mixing myself a dark gray color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my black, and I'm going to put just a tiny bit of white in there. I don't need this to be really light. I really just kind of want to give myself kind of a roadmap for where these facial features are going. This isn't going to be the final color, and we'll adjust it many times by the time we are done with this, but I just kind of want to get them in place, and we're not using pencils or anything like that, so if we have a nice dark gray to use, that will help us to make any adjustments if we need to. So I've got my dark gray, I'm using my medium brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just wisp in a little bit of fur around where the eye socket or where the eye is going to go. So I'm going to give you a couple of dots. We'll make dots and then we're going to connect them. So I'm going to have you go about halfway in between the left and the right of the top of your canvas. And then you're just going to come straight down to almost where you feel the halfway mark is. So I think the halfway point is right about here. So I'm about an inch or a little bit above the halfway point. And that's where I'm going to make my first dot. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go about 2 inches to the right and come up maybe about half of an inch to an inch, make myself another dot. And now I'm going to connect these. So I want this to be really a loose brush stroke. I don't need a really firm line. It's going to be almost straight on the top, but then it's going to have a curve down below. So here I go. I'm going to take my brush and I'm just going to kind of do these like light wispy lines. Every stroke that we do on this painting is, except for the eyes, and the teeth, is fur. So, oh, and the bottom lip too. So when I'm painting fur, I'm always thinking I'm painting fur. So I'm always having these little wispy strokes. So I'm going to do that on the bottom here too, but I know that underneath the eyes, they kind of come down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, as I do this, I'm just going to kind of come down like this and back up into this little corner. And then I'm going to make another one over on this side. So I'm going to come over maybe about 3 inches from this corner to the left, make myself a dot. And then I'm going to go diagonal up about 2 inches, make myself another dot. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm doing my brush strokes kind of up and to the left this way to reach this corner. And then from this corner, I'm going to go down and out and make this more of like a little scoopy area, like more of an oval. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a marking for the top of the nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come straight down between these eyes, and I'm going to come down maybe about 4 inches to about here, and I'm going to make myself a little mark. The panther noses kind of are wide. They go about as wide as the corners of the eyes. So I know that I want the outside edges to be as wide as these eyes. And it's got a little bit of a hump on either side. It dips down in the middle with a little bit of a hump on either side. So you could kind of come down, make yourself a dot, come down, make yourself a dot, and then just make it. Less is more on this. You don't need a lot of paint. So something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I want to kind of identify where the bottom of the whole face is going to go, so we can build like the cheeks and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come straight down from this center mark, and I'm going to stop maybe about 3 inches from the bottom of my canvas, and that's where the very bottom of that chin is going to go. I'm just reloading with a little bit of paint on my brush. So now what I'm going to do is I want to kind of identify where the little cheeks are going to go and the mouth, so this way we can figure out where that mouth is going to go. So I know that the cheeks are going to be between the top of the nose and the mouth, so they're going to be in here somewhere, and I need to know how far out they go. So from what I've seen, most of the panther cheeks are going to go about as far out as the colored part of that eye is going to go, which is going to be somewhere in here. So I'm just going to go straight down from about here, straight down, and go right about halfway between my top of my nose and my mouth, or the bottom of my face, and make a mark. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here before I forget what I was doing. So I'm going to just travel straight down, straight down, straight down, straight down until I get about halfway between the top of my nose and the bottom of my mouth and make myself a little marker. Now I'm going to just kind of wisp in a couple of cheeks. I want to stay away from the mouth, so I'm going to come to, so I don't go too far, I'm going to come up here maybe about an inch, make myself a little mark here, and then I'm going to come up maybe about another inch and make myself a little mark. This is going to be inside the mouth. This is going to be the bottom lip part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from here to this mark with a scooping motion, and then from here to this mark with a scooping motion. So here we go. And again, I'm not going to use a firm brush stroke. I'm just going to kind of almost just like tap my brush to get to the edge of there. And then I'm going to do this, tap my brush to get to the edge of here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect these two marks to the inside corners of the eye. Okay, so we're not going to use a lot of paint. I'm just going to kind of lightly just kind of dust whatever remnants I have on my brush and mark it there. And then from this inside corner, go down here, mark it here. And now I want to close off my mouth in through here. So I'm going to go about halfway between here and here. Going to make myself a mark halfway between here and here. Make myself a mark. And now I'm going to connect these with a little rough line. Somewhere in through there, and then I have a little mouth. So all I'm going to do for the little mouth is make myself a little, almost like a scooping from this mark here down, and just kind of scoop it over like that. And that is all I'm going to do for outlining my facial features. We're going to use the small brush for the next step, so you can get that out and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing the first layer of our eyes. So I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm just going to use yellow and white paint. These panther eyes, they can be green, they can be like a beautiful like rusty color, they can be yellow, they can be all kinds of colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a really light base for the eye, and then when I go to put the colors, like the more dominant colors on later, they'll be you're going to see them in a much more intense vibrancy because I have this light background. So I'm going to put yellow and white on my brush at the same time. And I, in essence, have given myself what I'm going to call the eye socket, where the whole eye is going to go in this darkest area in here. So when I do the this light part, I'm not going to go all the way to the edges where I have the gray. I'm going to stay just a little bit away from there. And I'm also going to leave a little black pupil at the top. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with a little U that's going to be away from this lighter fur that I have up towards the top of the eye. And I'm going to have it a little bit in, not necessarily right in the center. I'm going to go a little bit to the left of the center. So I'm going to just start with this little U. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this line over close to the edge, but not all the way where the fur is. And same thing on the right side, close to where the fur is, but not all the way. And then just bring myself down here, not all the way to the fur. And then I'm just going to color it in. So you want a nice even coat. So if you have to reload your brush, like I have to reload my brush, I'm going to go for it. But if it's not a solid color, don't worry about it, because we're going to be doing a bunch of layering on top of it to make it into a much more realistic looking eye. Just think of this as the base coat. It can be more yellow in some spots. It can be more white in other spots. You just want to have a nice solid coat. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the other eye. So again, you don't have to worry about it being perfect. Just kind of get that coat on there. Make sure you've got a dip down at the bottom, and it's almost like just a slow arcing motion at the top. And if you don't get a perfect shape, don't worry about it. We'll have plenty of time to reshape it. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to do a little U closer to the inside of the eye than the outside of the eye, and up towards the top, but not all the way toward, not touching the fur. And then I'm going to come down here, not all the way to the fur, over here, not all the way to the fur. Then I'm going to do my arcing line at the bottom, and then I'll color it in with this color. And then we are going to be using the medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this first layer of the eyes on here, you can put your small brush away in your water cup and take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing the outline for the body. So this will include our ears and the back and the arm, I think that's what it's called. No, it's called a leg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using this same gray that I had, that dark gray, and I'm just going to give you a couple of markers, and we're just going to connect those markers, and hopefully by the end we'll have some kind of outline that will resemble the beautiful panther cat that we've got aspirations of painting. So I'm using my medium brush. The first mark that I'm going to make is I'm going to go straight up from the center of the nose, and I'm going to come up, I would say this is about quarter way down your canvas. So if this is like your halfway point of your canvas from top to bottom, I would say you're at about the quarter way mark. That's going to be the top of the head. Now we're going to make the ears. So for the ears, if you go maybe to the edge of your fur here and go straight up, that's going to take you to about a good place for your the top of your ear to start. And I'm a little bit higher than here, so maybe about 3 inches away from the top of the canvas. I've got a mark right there. So I want to do the same thing for the other ear. So I'm going to just go straight across here, till I'm about 1.5 inches away from the edge of my canvas and make myself another mark. So now I have the tops of the ears and the top of the head. So I'm going to make the inside part of the ears and the top of the head so we don't get too confused with the whole bunch of dots. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make, for the top of the head, I'm going to make an arcing motion, but I don't want it to go too far past my eyes. So you could probably come maybe about where your pupil is, the inside of your pupil, and come straight up, and it's going to be a little bit below here and just kind of make a little bit of an arc. And same thing with over here, just kind of come straight up and a little bit. You don't really need much. Again, we're just kind of putting in these areas so when we do add highlights and shadows and fur, we'll have a little bit of a guide. And then from here, I'm just going to kind of maybe dip it down a little bit and then just give it a little bit of a shape. It doesn't have to be a super straight line. And then the same thing with this. Maybe I'll just kind of come down here with a little bit of a curve, but it doesn't have to be much. So now I've got the top of the head and the two ears, and they could be, you know, different shapes. They could be turned a little bit different. It's gonna, you know, based on the way that the cat is looking, will depend on what size your ears are. So then what I'm gonna do is I wanna kind of finish this side of the face. So I know that it's gonna I have my ear, which they have really large ears and they almost kind of work their way into the face. So from here, I'm gonna kind of make myself a marker a little bit above my eye and to the right, just a little bit. And that's gonna be the bottom part of my ear. So I'm just gonna kind of maybe bring this out a little bit and then maybe bring it back in. And then maybe there's another little bump here and come back in. So I just have kind of like a little curvy line. And again, depending on how you're looking at the ears, some of them look really rounded at the top, some of them are pointy. So however yours comes out is totally fine. And then I have the side of the face that I need to attend to. So I'm gonna just come down maybe to the bottom of my fur and come out just a little bit further than that, make myself a mark. And then I'm gonna come about where the corner of the nose is, come to here, and then down just a little bit and make myself another mark. And then I'm going to connect these two, again, with a really rough line. I don't really need much detail at all, just something that's going to connect those two. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the left-hand side. So I've got, you know, you can just kind of come straight over at the same point right about here. You can mark yourself maybe, you know, a little bit above the eye, somewhere in through here. You know that you've got to come out a little bit, and then again make yourself a little bit of a rough line going in through here. And then I've got some kind of ear up in through here. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly the same as the other one. Maybe this is at a different angle. And then we're gonna finish the arm part. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna come directly down from the nostril all the way to the bottom of the canvas, make myself a mark, and then I'm going to make myself kind of a curved line. This is in essence going to be the prowling leg, but we just kind of want to put it in place. It comes pretty close to the mouth in through here. And this, I'm just kind of giving it a light kind of blend into this black. We're going to add more detail to it in a little bit, but I just kind of want to get it in place for now. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the back of the shoulders. So I'm going to come up this ear a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, make myself a mark. Then I'm going to come up in this vicinity, which will be to the right of this ear and up almost maybe about 1 inch, 1.5 inches away from the top of the canvas, somewhere about there. And I'm going to connect these two again with a really kind of rough line. Maybe there's a little bump in through there. The less straight you have it, you don't really want a straight. If you give it a little bit of a bump here, that's going to show more movement in that shoulder. And then I'm going to take this and I'm just going to kind of give not a point at the top, but enough so it looks like that shoulder blade, and I'm just going to kind of come down over in through here, and then I have one more mark to make, which is right up in through here. That's going to be the back. And those are going to be all the outlines that I do. So let's see, what are we going to do next? We're going to use this same brush, your medium brush, for the next step, so you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing our first layer for the fur. So the colors I'm going to be using are black, brown, and white. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I do want to kind of forewarn you that your painting's not going to look awesome after this step. This is just the first layer. So what I really like to do when it comes to fur is I build it in layers. I do know that the majority of this animal is black, so we do not need a ton of paint, but I still like that layering process because it's going to make it look more realistic. So what I'm going to do for this step is I am going to again use black, brown, and white, but first what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of put in my lighter fur, or at least where I perceive the lighter fur to be, which is going to be in through these cheek areas. It's going to be like a little highlighted area on the side of the nose, maybe on the top of the arm, maybe a little bit on the ear, above the eye. So you'll see where I'm putting the lighter fur, and then I'll work my way in and kind of blend it into the darker fur, and that's when I'll be introducing more black and brown. The top of the nose itself in through here, in the way that I'm presenting it, is really, really dark. So I'm going to be using a lot of brown in through there. And when I go to do these areas in the cheeks, again, I'm always thinking fur as I'm doing this, so you'll always see my brush moving in the direction that I think the fur is growing or coming out of the body at. So in through here, you'll see my brush kind of moving in this type of direction. This is where all the whiskers are going to come out. In through here, you'll see my brush moving in this type of direction. Over on the side of the face, it'll be moving in this type of direction. And I'll talk about it as I'm doing it, but sometimes I just go so fast that I don't say exactly everything I'm doing. But you'll see how I transition through this. And just know that if you do use too much paint and you're like, oh my God, I can't do anything with it, just let it dry, back off, let it dry, go paint somewhere else on the canvas, and then you can come back and make any corrections. Plus, we're going to be doing another layer on the fur too, which will help to make it look a little bit more realistic too. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to take some of that original dark gray that I had, and I'm going to add a little bit of white to it. So I'm just making a lighter gray. And if you want yours to be a little bit warmer looking, you could actually, use a little bit of brown as well. That's going to be your own personal preference. And again, I'm not going to use a lot of paint. So once I get my color I want, I'm just going to wipe it off on my palette. And then you can start anywhere you want, but I think I'm just going to kind of start from here and just work my way up. So I know that I want this particular area here. The lightest part is going to be the part that's closest to us. So if it's a rounded object, it's whatever part is closest to you visually. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's the lightest part is at the end. So I'm just going to start to work some lighter color in through here. And again, if you go too much or you feel like it went too light on you, just go into that darker gray or into black and just tone it down a little bit, and you can just bring it out towards the darker area with a little bit of black. So what you're doing is you're starting light and then you're getting it to kind of go darker as it's going into the darkness. And this cat, I'm trying to make it look like it's coming out of, I don't know, out of the night, just prowling throughout the jungle. And, you know, maybe he's looking for his evening dinner or something. But so I definitely just want some really light spots, and then everything else just kind of fades into the darkness. Maybe I've got a little bit of lightness going on in through here for like a little bit of a shadow, some of his fur on his shoulder or something. So I've got that. Now I'm going to move on into the face. So I'm going to use a little bit of that lighter shade of gray. I know that the two cheeks are going to kind of be split in through here, and there's going to be a dark area underneath the nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of take my lighter gray and kind of separate these two right now, just so I don't have a solid area in through there. And then I've got the nose here too, so I'm just going to take this right now and kind of give myself that upper tier of the little cheek. And I'm doing this curved kind of line. It doesn't have to be super curved, but you can see that I'm definitely adding this fur type texture as I go along. And I'm just adding some more paint to my brush, and this is where the whiskers are going to come out. So it almost gives you the impression that there are rows of lightness and darkness. You don't have to do it too systematic. Sometimes the messier you do it, the more natural it's going to look. And again, we will add additional layers on top of this. So if yours doesn't look exactly like mine right now, don't worry, you can certainly work on it a little bit more as we go through the process. But I'm going to go ahead and do this side as well, and I'm using the lighter gray that I created, and I'm just using very little bit of paint and just kind of wisping these in through here, maybe up along this edge a little bit. So that's the start of that. Now I'm going to kind of just work my way up. I know that I have a highlighted part on this side of the face where the side of the nose kind of meets the cheek area. And so I'm still just using this lighter gray color right now until I've got everything I want kind of in place. And I know that the fur is going to kind of just work its way down in this type of direction. Just putting a little bit of highlight going up right into the corner of that eye. Maybe I'm going to pick up a little bit of brown and a little bit of my darker gray. I don't want this to be a flat area with no fur, but I do want there to be some fur that is going to tell the viewer that there's some kind of dimension to it. So I'm really dark with my paint right now. I've got black and my darker gray and a little bit of brown. I didn't wash my brush. I'm just adding these little hints of pieces of fur in through here. And I'm going to go right along this edge so I don't have a solid outline in through there. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the lighter gray so I can make this look a little bit more natural on top of this eye. So I'm bringing these out towards this direction because I know that that's more the direction that these pieces of fur are going to kind of grow. Make sure I've got some underneath here. I'm picking up some of my brown and black to, again, I want fur everywhere. So even though it is really dark in some areas, I still want there to be fur represented. Even if I have to go another layer of black, I want to make sure that I've got the whole area covered. Now I'm going to work towards my nose, I'm just wiping my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up some brown. Again, this isn't going to be the final color of the whole thing, but it's gonna start taking its form when you're putting on these initial layers of the fur. And the noses can be really, really dark. They can have some brown in them. They can have just gray, whatever works for you. But I'm going to make it a little bit lighter down towards that where the top part of the nose starts. So I'm just pushing my brush a little bit more, so I've got a little bit more lightness in through there. And I needed to make, it has to make sense that it meets the side of the face, so I just added a little bit more darkness to my brush, just so I don't have a solid line going where the nose meets the edge of the face. And then I'm going to go over on the right hand side here, picking up a little bit more of that light gray, maybe adding a little bit of highlight in through here, a little bit lighter fur in through here. Maybe the moon is casting a highlight on some of this beautiful fur that this incredibly awesome creature has on it. So I've added a little bit lightness there. I'm picking up some of the darker gray and a little bit of black, again, just to make sure that I've got some fur in through here, but not a lot. This is definitely a less is more kind of painting. We really don't need a lot of paint to get a really good effect. And again, we will add a second coat, but this is just kind of telling us where the light spots and the dark spots are going to be. I'm going to add a little bit of what I'm going to call an eyelid over here, like I have over on this side. So just a little bit of that lighter gray. And again, I'm always thinking fur, fur, fur. I don't need it to be really powerful in its color, but I definitely want it to be in the correct direction. I've got some little pieces over here, maybe just twinkling on the side of on the face, so we can see the edge of the face, but we don't need too much in through there. And then you can see I'm just kind of working my way up. I don't want the top of the head to be the focal point. I want the face to be the focal point. So as I get in towards the head part, I'm probably just going to use whatever remnants of gray that I had on my brush and just kind of get some little pieces of, almost very subtle fur going on in this forehead. Just making sure I've got another coat on the whole thing. And then as I go towards those ears, I think I want a little bit of a kind of a real highlight up in through here. Like maybe this is really being hit by the moon. Maybe this is the part that's poking out from behind one of the trees, and it's really has a bright cast upon it from a bright highlight from the moon or something. And then I'm just going a little bit darker as I get down towards the rest of the ear. And this might be the inside of the ear. It might be the outside of the ear, whatever you imagine it to be. The ears can be turned. So whatever, if you want to see the inside, perfect. If not, no worries. I'm going to put a little bit of fur in through here, lighter fur, so you can see the contour of the head. And then again, this is just the first layer. We're just kind of getting the information of where all of these little contours are. I've got a little bit lightness in through here, maybe a little bit in through here. And sometimes I'm just rubbing my brush because I have the remnants of one of those other grays on there, and it helps me to just kind of control the quantity if I can just use that little, bits that I have left from the previous section. So brown and black. Again, my main colors are gray, brown, and black. So brown, black, and white. And I'm just kind of making it kind of make sense for me. I know that there's little protrusions above the eyes. I know that the forehead is going to be bumped out a little bit. I've got my arm, I've got the start of here. Now I want to do a ridge back, or like where the kind of, I don't know if it's the spine or the shoulder blade. So I'm going to use a little bit of that lighter gray, and I'm really just going to kind of bring it near what I feel to be the center of the back or the shoulder blade. And I'm just going to kind of pull this out. This is going to be my brightest spot. It's going to show that that part is almost like either a bone or a muscle or something that is really protruding, as if it's, you know, prowling. And we've got those the anatomy correct with all of its back and stuff. So I think that's looking pretty good to me. They do have like some wrinkles. You can put more back there if you want to. So that's looking pretty good to me. I am going to switch brushes to my small brush for the next step, so you can do the same and just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting some panther teeth. So I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm going to be using brown, yellow, white, and black. And think of these as very subtle. I'm just having it so the mouth is just slightly open, like it's breathing with its mouth open as it's prowling through the jungle. So it's just a very subtle detail. I've already got kind of my bottom lip in place, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have short teeth in through here, and then we'll have a couple of the fangs here, but because the mouth is partly closed, you're not going to see the top of the fangs. And these panthers have fangs on the top and the bottom, so you can use your imagination as to which ones we're painting. But what I'm going to do first, the biggest key here is you do not need a lot of paint. If you do use a lot of paint and you find yourself running into trouble that you can't change the colors as you want them to, then just let it dry and start over. But if you can use a very little bit of paint, you'll be able to just kind of tweak these colors as you go. So I'm going to actually pre-mix myself a yucky tooth color, a dirty tiger tooth color. So it's just going to be like a pale, like brownish yellowy kind of color, and I'm going to get my teeth in place, and I don't want them to be really solid in color, so I'm just going to be making myself kind of just a couple of little bumps along, you know, a little bit above my mouth, the lip, so something like this, and then I'm going to just pick up a little bit of brown and then just kind of pull them down. I just wiped my paintbrush off on my paper towel. So just kind of pulling this down a little bit. So once I've got those bottom teeth kind of in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my fangs in place. So again, I'm just using that dirty brownish kind of color. And these ones are going to be more curved and a little bit bigger. And of course, I'm bringing them down close to the bottom lip. You can have a little bit of a black separation between if you want to. So again, these are going to be hidden up above. So I'm just kind of getting the shape in there. And now I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. And I'm just going to pick up brown. And I'm going to start to kind of like separate these teeth a little bit and get almost like a shadow at the bottom of them. I really kind of want it to be pretty dark, with just a little tiny bright spot up at the top. You could make yours as bright or as dark as you want, totally up to you, but I'm going for mine on a little bit of the darker side. Now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black, or you could pick up like the dark gray. And now I'm really going to add a shadow at the bottom of these teeth. And this, again, is going to just kind of make them a subtle kind of detail on the painting. And if you need to do more layers on them, if you're not getting this dimensional type element to them, you can certainly just kind of wait a little bit and make them a little bit darker after they dry. But it's definitely easier to do it when you can control the color of the paint. If you've got too much paint on your brush, it becomes really quite difficult to get them into that color zone that you want. I just am getting them a little bit darker. I don't want my teeth to be the star of the show, so I'm making sure that I've got them as dark as I want them with its little subtle dirtiness. I don't know if they're really dirty teeth, but we're going to consider them to be in the shadows of the mouth. But you can certainly, like I said, the more subtle they are, the more your eyes are going to be drawn towards that, towards the eyes, and these become less of a focal point, but maybe you want yours to be a focal point. So that again is up to you. And I'm probably, before the painting's done, I might come back and do one more little tweak on them, but those are looking pretty good to me. So I am going to move on to my next step, which will be with this small brush, so you can just get ready for that. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are painting the bottom lip. So I'm gonna be using my small brush, and really we kind of already have it in place, but we just need a little highlight on it. So I'm gonna be using white and black. I start with white. I'm just gonna give myself kind of a little bit of a curved line, and then I wiped my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm picking up a little bit of black, and I'm just getting it to blend in just a little bit. I want it to be subtle, but I want you to see that there's a highlight there. And that's all I'm going to do for my bottom lip. So we're going to be using the same brush for the next step, but you're going to want to wash it and dry it. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step, we're using our small brush. We're doing our second layer to the eyes. So this is going to be where we're going to enhance this color part. The colors that I'm using are rust, yellow, green, and white. And you can alter this to be whatever tone that you want. The trick here is you're going to want it the darkest up at the top, because there's always going to be a shadow underneath that eyelid, and then the lightest down below. So how I'm going to start this is I've got rust, yellow, and green on my brush at the same time, and I'm going to put this darker tone up at the top. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more rust because I want it to be pretty dark. So I've got this darker tone up at the top, and then I just kind of blend it or fade it down into the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, rust, green, and yellow. And again, you can have yours really on the more orange side or on the more green side, whatever is visually appealing to you. And then as I get towards the bottom part of the eye, I'm going to pick up more white in my color combination. So I just picked up a little bit of yellow and white. And again, less is more. The less paint you have on your brush, the more you're going to be able to control the outcome of this. And you can go back and you can tweak your colors. But if you attempt to, go in with a whole bunch of paint on your brush, you're going to have a difficult time blending from dark to light. You can even put a little bit of a darker ring around the pupil part. So if you want to do that, you can do that. And if you want it a little bit darker around the edge, the bottom edge, perfect. But the lightest part is going to be near the bottom in that main area through there. So I'm going a little bit of yellow and white over here on this other eye. Get this to blend into the darker color from the top. And then I'll get it nice and light in this main bottom section with quite a bit of white. And again, if you wanted yours to be more green, by all means, some of these Panthers have these beautiful green eyes. Some of them are really, really yellow. Some of them have this more orangey look to them. So whatever tone it ends up for you, and if you like it, just go for it. The key again is to get that top part the darkest, and if you want a little bit of darkness around the pupil, and then of course you could do a touch of darkness around the edge, but the lightest part you definitely want to be in this vicinity. So I'm just kind of tweaking mine just a little bit, make sure I've got it the way that I want it before I move on to the next step. It's looking pretty snazzy. I like doing eyes. They just, by the time I'm done, it's like I just want to have a conversation with these animals because they start to look right at me. I do want to just kind of play with this one just for another second, and then we are going to be using this same brush. No, let's move on. Let's move to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your eyes in the perfect color that you want them, you can put this small brush away in your water cup and take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are finishing our nose. I'm gonna be using my medium brush, and the colors that I'm gonna be using are rust, brown, yellow, white, and black. So I'm using all my colors except for green. So how I'm gonna do this, there's on the edge of the fur part of the nose is a little bit of a light spot. So I'm gonna start there, and then we're gonna do a little bit of separation from the skin part of the nose to the nostrils. The nostrils are gonna remain black, and we're gonna put a darker area where the skin part is, and then we're gonna finish our fur on the nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a very little bit of white, yellow, and rust. I mean, just a teeny tiny bit. This is going to be the highlight part at the edge of the nose. So I'm just going to kind of almost like tap it at the edge of the nose like this, because there's a little bit of fur there. Something like this. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up rust and brown. So I just wiped it off on my paper towel, and I'm picking up rust and brown, and I want this light part to kind of blend in with the rest of the nose. So I'm going to just kind of lightly kind of rub it in, so it's blending in with the upper part of the nose a little bit. But you don't need to go too high with this color. And then what I'm going to do, and it can kind of come around the edges a little bit. And we can always tweak it later too if it's not super perfect. Now what I'm going to do is wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up brown and black. So a little bit of brown and a little bit of black to finish getting this to kind of blend in with this front part. Because I don't want it to look like it's separated, like it's different pieces. So I want them to definitely merge together. And if you wanted, you could have a little bit more rust on the nose fur itself. And the nose it's really wide. So it's this whole area, and then it just rolls down into the cheeks. So you want to make sure that you've got a little bit of fur in through here, but yet the brightest part is kind of up in through here. So I've got the black and brown on my brush right now. I've got that little bit of a light area at the top, and I'm just adding a little bit of fur up in through here, but not a lot. And then I'm going to add that center skin part. So I have the brown and the black on my brush, so I'm going to just kind of use that as my skin color. This is just going to be really subtle, so you're going to want to come almost outlining this, the fur part like this and like this. And then the nostrils are really kind of shallow, like they're like almost just little slits. I think I need a little bit more lightness, so I'm picking up just a little bit more gray so you can see it. So something like this and like this. And then as you come down in through here, again, your nostrils here and here, but when you come down here, if you can leave a little bit of that black in the middle, that will make it look a little bit more realistic too. So that's all I'm going to do for my nose. And you can certainly tweak it a little bit if you wanted to, and we might tweak it a little bit when we're doing our final details later. But we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So when you get done having fun with your nose, you can wash and dry that medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing the chin fur. So that's going to be right down here. I'm going to be using brown, black, and white, and I really want this to look like it's in the shadows. So I don't want it to be bright, but I do want you to be able to see it. So I'm going to be using this medium brush, and I'm really just going to be tapping the little corner of the brush to get these little, almost like tiny little beard whiskers on there. So I'm going to put brown, black, and white on my brush at the same time. So brown, a little bit black, and a teeny bit of white on my brush at the same time. And I'm just going to use my corner of my brush, and I'm just going to start kind of tapping. Ooh, I need a little more white because you can't even see it at all. I'm just going to start kind of tapping. And you don't want it super straight. You want it to look like there's a little bit of a curve to it. And if you go too light, just add back some of the brown and black. Add brown and black on top of the white, and then it's going to make it look nice and in the shadows. And you can add as much as you want. I think I want a little bit more brown in through here. And you just kind of keep building it until you've got enough dimension on it where you feel that it reads as realistic. And that's gonna, you know, it might take a couple of layers. It might take a little bit of, you know, black streaks throughout it. If you get it too solid of a color, definitely just pick up a little bit of black and put some little black streaks throughout it. But you want it to read as that it's in the shadows. You don't want it to be super bright. And sometimes, like I said, just adding more helps to, you know, make it more textured looking. So I keep just adding a little bit of black to my brush to separate some of these because it was a little bit too solid of a color for me. Now I'm picking up a little bit more brown and white and just adding a little bit more fluff on top of it. And once you've got it as visible as you want it to be, we are going to use the same brush for the next step, but we're going to wash it and dry it so you can just get ready for that. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our face fur. I had to say that slow because I know if I said that fast, it was not happening. You try and say face fur 3 times fast. Finish face fur, finish face fur, finish. Finish face fur, finish face fur. Finish face fur, finish face fur, finish face fur. All right, so what I'm going to do is the colors I'm using are black and white, or any combination of gray and brown. And how I'm going to do this is I'm really just adding another layer of fur. So I'm going to add another layer in through here. So maybe these little rows of fur pop out a little bit more. I'm going to add more in through here so it adds a little bit extra highlight. I'll probably use a little bit lighter shade of gray than I have used in the previous areas, as well as the same grays and black and brown. I want another layer over the whole thing. And again, I'm going to be using this medium brush, and I'm going to be using short little skirting type brush strokes. So I think I'm just going to start at the bottom and work my way up. I'm just doing the face. And I definitely want it to look like there's some good texture. So you'll see in some spots, I'm going to just use black on top of what I've already done, and that's going to help to layer it. If you just go dark to light, which a lot of instructional videos will teach you to do that, if you just go dark to light, you're going to miss shadowy type areas within those light areas. So going dark to light to dark to light to dark to light, if you keep layering it, you're going to have more dimensional elements to it. So that's how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to start down at the bottom. I feel like this area is pretty good, so I'm just going to go up from there. When I do these little cheek areas, I'm going to use some of that original gray that I used, but I'll probably also use a little bit lighter version of it as well. And the first time I did it, I did a like outward skirting motion. This time, if I use an inward skirting motion like this, it's going to add a super natural type of look to it, so you can get that fur to really like overlap onto one another, and it's going to look really natural, especially with those lighter pieces of fur. That's going to tell a distinct direction of them. So I am holding my brush kind of in the elongated way, and you're going to be able to see these little tiny bits of light spots here and there. And again, you could have it lighter in some areas, like maybe it's lighter around the edges, or maybe it's lighter around here, but wherever it protrudes the most, that's where it should be the lightest, or it's being hit by a moon, the light source of the moon or something. So again, I'm using a little bit of white, but I don't want to go all the way white, so I'm going to just add a little bit of gray as well, and just kind of get these additional pieces of fur on here, so when I go to put my whiskers, I've got a great base for it. And you can see I'm hardly using any paint, and it's giving it this great textural element to it. And I know that the little fur comes out underneath those nostrils, so you can even kind of pull some right from inside the nostrils and just pull it right out. And that again makes it look really nice and natural. And this is looking good over here to me, so I'm going to just start traveling up that face with this little bit lighter of a color. Give myself a little bit of a highlight in through here, as if this part of the face is being illuminated. And again, I know that this connects to the nose, so I definitely have to make sure that there's some kind of good transition in through there. So I'm going to pick up some of my black and brown to transition into that real nose area, but I want to make sure that it looks nice and natural. So I'm wiping my brush off on my paper towel right now. This, again, less is more. Pick up black paint. If you feel like you've got too much paint on your brush, just get something on there that resembles, you know, the fur texture, but it does not have to be super bright. It's a black animal, so we can't make it too light. Otherwise it's not gonna read as black. It will read as a gray animal or a white animal. So I want to make sure that I keep those dark spots in there, so it definitely reads as what I want it to read as. So I feel like this is pretty good. I think I want some more in through underneath this nose, in through here. Make sure this looks nice and rounded over there, like the whole cheek is cheek. Yeah, the whole area is nice and rounded. Coming over here, adding a little bit more lightness over here. These have to look like they're similar in size, so they look like they belong to the same animal. And just adding a little bit of lightness in through here so you can see the shape of the face. Kind of bringing this up in through here. Feel like this is a little bit too dark in through here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more lightness so that nose can really, you know, stand out on its own. I think I'm going to put some more lightness underneath this eye right in through here. And again, I'm just kind of adding these little bits of highlights to make sure that everything reads the way that I want it to read. I really want there to appear that there's a light source over here, so I want this to be highlighted here. That's where this ear gets a little bit of a highlight, but we'll talk about the ears on the next step. We're going to be finishing up those fur details in a bit, but I want there to be some fur on the face, and for this to make sure you can see the contour of the face. So I'm starting to go a little bit into my lighter gray here. And again, I'm hardly putting any paint on. I mean, that's the beauty of this. I think I want a little highlight on the corner of this little nose here. Just a little bit to tell you that the moon is coming from over on this side. Maybe a couple more white pieces over here. Maybe I've got some extra little bits of lightness in the fur underneath this eye, just so you can, again, just really be able to see the details without going too much over the edge with too many light pieces, because I don't want it to turn into a different color animal. I want it to be this beautiful black panther. I know that there's some lighter pieces up in through here. I think I want maybe a little bit more in through here, so I'm going for a little bit more brown on my brush. Again, I don't want it to look like there's any flat spots, but I do want you to be able to see the fur everywhere. I think I want a little bit lighter area here on the nose, and then I'm gonna go over onto this right side of the face here. Yeah, that looks good. I needed a little bit of lightness there. It was feeling a little bit too, like the nose was pushed in too flat for me. So I'm going to add some lightness over here underneath this eye a little bit, just little tips of lightness. Maybe bring it up in through here, and then I've got some little bits of fur down underneath here. Again, just want to make sure we can see all of the contours of the face. Maybe this gets a little bit more lightness there. I need a little bit more on that eyebrow bone. And you can see I'm just kind of, I am kind of systematically moving through it, but I really am looking to make sure I have enough dimension and enough elements on here that are going to look realistic. I know we're going to be doing some really beautiful details to the eyes in a little bit, so that's going to help. But outside of that, I want to make sure that everything else is up to par with those eyes and with the rest of the body that we're going to be doing. So I'm putting I just wiped my brush on my paper towel, and I'm putting a little bit of brown on there just so I can get some a couple of little maybe fluffier pieces around here. And I am going to be doing the ears on the next step. So really right now I'm just going to kind of get a little bit of fur around the forehead. I'm putting black back on my brush now so I can get this all to really work together, the light spots and the dark spots. And sometimes you just got to go for it and just kind of start moving that brush around. I'm still going in my direction of what I feel the fur is going to be moving. Maybe a little bit more highlight right here on that nose. Oh yeah, I needed that highlight on that nose. All right, so let's see. I think I've got enough fur on this face. I am going to be using the same brush for the next step, so you can wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our body fur. So I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black, white, brown, and any shade of gray that I want. And really, I'm hardly going to do anything on this step. I just really want to elevate the little highlight up and through this ridge back here, maybe a little bit more on this ear, and then maybe a touch more here, and then make sure that I've got enough of a transition from light to dark, but really I'm just kind of going for one last little, give me my final details on my body fur. So I'm gonna go with white and a little bit of my gray just to start, to get these lighter areas in place. And again, I'm not touching my canvas hardly at all, and I'm just gonna kind of give myself this little speckle of highlight up and through here. Put my head back so I can see what I'm doing, maybe bring it down here. And the key is to kind of give it a gradient so it's lighter in some areas and darker in others. You don't want the same intensity through the whole thing. And then maybe I'll put a little bit of this lightest color up in through here. Maybe just make sure I've got that ear shaped the way that I want it to be shaped. Maybe it's got a little bit. See, I'm just kind of reshaping as I go through this process, and you can do the same on your painting if you'd like to. And if you want it any lighter or darker, let's see what else. Maybe a little bit of my lighter gray, but not as light as what I just had on my brush in through here, just to get it to transition down through here. Maybe a touch on this ear. If it's being highlighted from over here, maybe I've got a little bit more in through there. I think my face is pretty good. Maybe just some little tiny specks of fur off the corner of this ear. But again, I want to make sure that I'm moving into that ear gradually so it doesn't just look like a firm outline. So if you need to put some additional little pieces in through there, I think I'm going to pick up some brown in black and add a little bit more fur in through here. Just again so it's not just black over here. I want to give the illusion or the impression that there might be some little pieces of, maybe he's got some Panther rolls on his shoulder or something with that fur. So maybe just pop in just a couple of lighter pieces of fur over there. I think I just want just a little twinkle on this ear over there. And then same thing on this leg here. I want you to see it, but I don't want it to be the star of the show. So I'm going to put a little bit of this lighter color in through this area. Again, wherever I feel that would be hit the most with the light. And they do have pretty soft fur, so I don't want it to look too long. So I don't want these long, stringy kind of brush strokes. So if you find yourself having those really long, where it looks like it's long hair and you want it to be translated as a panther, definitely smooth out your strokes and make them look less long. So you could do that by bringing back some of the black, or some of the gray, and just kind of manipulating it through there. And this is all going to be shadow underneath here, so you don't really need to do anything there. And then let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? We are going to use our small brush for the next step. So once you've got enough of this second or final layer of fur on the body, you can put this medium brush away in your water cup, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing our eyes. So I'm going to use my small brush, and the colors I'm using are black and white. And then you can also use, I'll use the rust color as well, but if you want to, you can also use your yellow and your brown or your green, whatever colors you've used in the eyes. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my eyes are correctly shaped. So if they look different from one another right now in their shape, now's the time to do it. So for me, I feel like they're pretty similar to me, but I feel like I want to get rid of this points up in through here. So how I'm going to do that is I'm just going to put a shadow up at the top of each eye. So I'm going to use a little bit of black, brown, and rust, which are the colors that I originally used, and I'm just going to kind of close that off. You really want to make sure that there's a shadow underneath this eyelid. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of making sure that shadow is there. I wanted to get rid of that really curved or really pointy part over here. I just wanted to curve it just a little bit more. And then I'm going to wash and dry my little brush. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do the bottom of the eye. So they have like a little eyelid, is it called an eyelid? I think so. The little bottom part underneath their eyes. I know that the top part is definitely an eyelid, but I'm not quite sure what the bottom part is. So I'm going to use a little bit of white to start. I'm in essence just making a little highlighted line, but I want there to be space between my light color and the colored part of the eye. So I want there to be a black space in between. So I'm going to just kind of start right here and then just make myself a little kind of line like that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes when you're doing these things, the less perfect they are, the more natural they look. And I'm going to do the same thing over on here. I think I'm going to bring this one maybe up a little bit higher so you can see the where the edge of the eye goes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel and pick up a little bit of rust color. And I'm going to do a little almost like a skin part inside the corners of the eyes. So somewhere in through here, I'm just going to kind of put a little mark, a little rusty mark. And this is just going to, maybe it's part of this only in the shadowy areas, so it's more of the rust color. And if you did too much on these white, just pick up a little bit of black and you can totally, you know, dull it down or reshape it whatever way you want to. It's totally fine. You could even pick up a little bit of white, and if, especially on this side, since there's more highlight on this side, you can add a little extra highlight in this corner right in through here. And again, that's because you've got the highlight coming from here. Now I'm going to make sure that I have some twinkles in my eyes. So I'm going to just wash and dry it real quick, and I'm going to add a little bit of white to my brush. And I don't like these twinkles to be just one little dot. So I'm going to kind of do almost like a a line, but it'll have a little bit of movement to it. So it'll have a tiny bit of a curve. So I'm going to start somewhere over in through here, maybe the middle of the pupil, and then just kind of maybe skip it to the side. And then I'll do a similar one over on here, but I'm going to start a little bit to the left of the pupil, somewhere around here, and maybe just kind of skip it to the side. And they don't have to be exactly the same because each eye might be reflecting something different. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have enough hair or little tiny whiskery things on their eyebrows. So I'm going to use white and maybe a little bit of gray, and just make sure I have some smaller individual pieces of fur represented above the eyes. So when you're doing this, you know, if you do too much, obviously just pick up some black and you can reverse it. But they have, you know, smaller little pieces around the eyes and more individual pieces around the eyes. So that's why by coming back and with this brush, a small detailed brush, you can add almost like, I don't think they're eyelashes, but these individual type of pieces of fur around the eyes. And it's just going to make it look really that much more natural. And you can help to reshape it if you need to. And if you want to make sure you have a black area, so the eyelid, the top part, is going to have a little shadow that comes out past the eye. So if you don't already have a black or a dark area in through here, if you put one there, that's going to help to separate that eyebrow part from this bottom part. So same thing over here. If you want to make sure that these are separated, just kind of put a little bit of darkness in through there. I'm going to put a couple of more singular pieces of fur over here. So it's going to be my light gray and or white. And I'm just going to kind of pop in these little individual pieces of fur. And again, that it's just going to add to the realistic look to this. If you want a couple of little ones underneath here, and you just don't go overboard. That's the whole thing, is trying to make sure that you control yourself to not put too much in there. It might just be one or two little pieces. It might, you know, just in strategic spots that are going to give it really the look that you're going for. I think that's looking pretty good. I think I want to maybe back off on this, just make this area a little bit smaller in through here. And then, it's looking pretty good. We are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your little details on your eyes, you can see I'm just adding a little bit more lightness around here, making sure that, again, it reads exactly as I want it to read. And then I am going to be washing and drying this small brush and getting ready for the next step. All right, so the next step is our whiskers. So I'm going to be using my small brush, and the colors I'm using are yellow and white. And if something goes wrong, I'll use black, because black can always erase a whisker. So how I'm going to do this is I am going to be watering down my paint, so that way when I go to do these, I have a nice long flowy brush stroke, but I don't want it to be too watered down. You don't want it to be like drippy wet, but you definitely want it to be on the more fluid side. So I've got my little yellow and white mixture. I don't want it to go too white, because I really want my eyes to be a focal point, and I have white in there. So that's what's going to draw the eye the most. And if you have really vibrant white big whiskers, it might take away from the focal point. So that's why I'm adding a little bit of yellow. You could actually add a little bit of brown if you wanted to, and water. So a couple drops of water into my paint, make sure that it's fluid enough. And then when I've got it the correct consistency that I want, so again, it's not watery, and it's not drippy, but it's definitely more fluid. And you can always, if it turns out to be too thin or too translucent, you can always add another layer on top of it, but going for the thinner with water is helpful in this stage. And then what I do with my brush is I'm going to spin it in my paint on the side of my palette so my brush is nice and pointy. And then when I go to do my whiskers, I'm not going to push hard, but I will reload my brush often, and I go pretty fast, so that way it gives it a natural curve. So these Panthers have probably more whiskers on them than I've seen on any cat. So they have them in various places. They have them above their eyes, like almost in their forehead a little bit. They also can have them coming out their eyelid, or the top of their eye a little bit. They have some coming out the side of their faces, and then they have a ton coming out of these cheeks. But what I saw, the longer and more dominant ones are along these edges, and then there's little shorter ones that come out from this interior part. So you want to make sure that they come out in different directions. You don't want them all to come out super straight. You want them to have a little bit of a curve to them. And if you need to practice on something, practice on the back of the canvas or something just to get that first stroke or two so you can get used to it. So here we go. So I'm going to just kind of start up in through here. I'll start at the top and just work my way down. So I'm going to put a couple in through here. So as I do this, I'm going to start slow, and then once I get going, I just start to flick, but I need to get my rhythm going first. So there's going to be one, maybe two, maybe there's one coming out here. Maybe I've got his couple coming out in through here. And let's say you made one that was too dark. You could quickly take like your medium brush with a tiny bit of water. Like this one's a little bit too thick for me. And you could just take it and you could thin it, or you could even make it go away, or just put some black paint on it, and that'll make it on the thinner side as well. So you'll find your rhythm, and if you don't want it so bright, you can always add a little bit of black into it so it's not so bright. And then I'm going to do a couple over here, so maybe somewhere in through there. Maybe I've got one up there. Maybe I've got a couple coming out of this eyebrow over here. Got another one coming out over here. And so I'm kind of bracing myself. I don't know if you can hear it. So I don't push hard. I've got my hand rested on my canvas. So that way I can kind of control how far I push my brush into my canvas. All right, so those are going to be those ones. I might come back and put a little bit of black on them after I get these other ones done, because I'll go back and dull down any too vibrant one that I don't like. And these ones are going to come out of your darker areas in your cheek part. So, I missed a couple on here on the face. So let me go make a couple on here. So there's couple there, and now I'm going to start making these humongo ones. So I am again doing really big ones coming out the sides of the face, but I want to make sure that they come out at different angles, so they don't all have to come out at the same angle. Maybe some go straighter up, maybe some are curved more, and then I need to have some coming maybe up through the interior. But they definitely get shorter as they come into the closer to the mouth a little bit. That looks like it's a good amount for that side. Now I'm going to go ahead and do some over here, and I'm going to start somewhere over here. My cup is going to get in my way here. And then I just kind of keep going until I have as many on here as I want. I've got them in different directions, and you'll see how I dull them down in a minute once I've got them on here, because some of these are a little bit too bright for me, because again, I don't want them to take away from the eyes. So I am going to, I'll dull them down in a minute, but making sure I've got some that are similar length on both sides. And maybe I've got, these kind of look like they're coming out at too similar of an angle, so I'm going to get one to go, a couple to go up, and maybe a couple to droop even further down. So definitely want to make sure you've got them coming out at different angles. That's pretty good. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I just washed and dried my brush real quick. I'm going to pick up a little bit of black paint, and I will kind of dull down any of these that I think are too powerful. So like these to me look like they're too much. So I'm just going to just go slowly and take a little bit of them off with a little bit of black paint. So I'm just kind of reversing it a little bit. And you can do the same thing. You can, you know, if one's too bright or is not in the right direction, you can either start over with it, or you can just kind of use that black, a little bit of black, just to shave it down a little bit. This one up here, I think I'm going to shave a little bit with a little bit of black. And as the black dries, it'll, you know, make it so it's not so prominent. I kind of like this one, but it's just a little bit too much for me. And that, again, the black will help you to make it less prominent, or even you can add little, you know, black whiskers in between the white ones, and that's going to make it look like the white ones are just shadowing, casting shadows upon, you know, another one. So you can certainly do that as well. Again, I've just got a little bit of black on my brush right now, and I'm making any one that was too bold, I'm just dulling it down a little bit. And that's, you know, one of those things when you're doing whiskers, you could use a really, really skinny, long brush, and make sure everyone, you're not gonna get any of them too thick. But you know, that's nature of the beast. You're trying to make a really skinny line with a paintbrush, so you're bound to make one wider than you want. But this is a great way to just kind of make any little subtle corrections, or to get them to be as kind of subtle as you want them to be, so you can just have fun with the modifications. But I think that's working. So we have one tiny little step left, which is the last step of any good painting. So we're going to do it with the small brush, so you can get ready for that. All right, so what we're doing for the next step is we are doing the final step, which is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right, and I usually sign it with black, but this is all black. So I think I'm actually going to use some rust and yellow and sign it in the bottom right-hand corner. I do my initials. You could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol. Whatever you want is totally fine. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a pretty panther, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.